Hello beautiful people, welcome back to my channel. So today we're going to discuss starting a practicum / internship program at your facility. Where do we begin? Because there's so much to cover. Not really, because it's all online. You can read all about it. You can follow the instructions to a T, but we're going to talk more, not necessarily about the structure of a program itself, really advocating for yourself and getting yourself started after you landed that first job. Okay, so let's just start out by talking about our training in and of itself on a bachelor's level. So you are required to do 200 plus hours of practicum. That's usually how it's broken down. So each practicum site, you know, at the end, it has to add up to 200 or more hours. Then your internship is supposed to be about 1,000 plus hours, okay? And then the total is supposed to come to a minimum of 1,200 hours. They usually give a little flexibility, like you can go, I think you could go up, obviously you could go up to however many hours it really takes, but that's the minimum requirement in order to sit for the board certification exam, and that's not unusual. Actually, most certification exams, you do need a minimum amount of hours. Like when I took my medical billing and coding certification, I needed to do so many hours before sitting for that exam. So that's not uncommon. Anyway, in terms of practicum, from a student's perspective, practicum / clinical placements, the goal really is to just get your feet wet. Just see how patients interact, see what the dynamics of the facility is like, see what a general day entails, and assessed as necessary. I personally do not like doing that for all 200 hours. I mean, a student, especially a music therapy student, like we're brilliant people. We don't really need like to do that structure every single semester. So as a practicum supervisor, I adjust it a little bit in the sense that like usually it's 20 to 50. I mean, it depends on the practicum because like it depends on how long it is, but usually I'll do like the first chunk as getting your feet wet and getting to know the patients and getting to know the facility. Maybe like 2 weeks, 3 weeks, right, as like an orientation. And then I just push them in. I push them in the pool. Because like sitting and watching and being spoon-fed through a practicum doesn't help anybody. Like, yeah, a practicum isn't necessary. It's not an internship. Like the goal, you know, you don't have that much responsibility. At least during my practicum, like I didn't have to transfer anyone. I didn't have to give meds to anyone. I was there. I was assisting. I did, I don't know, maybe a half hour of sessions, and then I went home. And I personally, as a student, did not like that at all. I felt like it was a waste of my time, especially when I was a senior in college. Now, as a junior, like sophomore, when it was my first practicum ever, it was great, you know, okay, come in, okay, assist, okay, lead a couple sessions, and then go home. Like, that's perfect for a sophomore, that's perfect for a junior, when it's your first practicum placement. But when you're a senior, like, I'm going off to internship in less than a year. Like, I don't think it's right to spoon feed a practicum student, especially when they're seniors in college. And that most of my practicum students have been seniors in college. So, and they have all been, and like I've been fortunate, I have wonderful students, and they're all like go-getters, top of their class, student leaders on campus. So pushing them into the puddle is not something that they're, like, it's scary, yeah, but like they all are go-getters. They've all developed grit. So this is just another thing that's going to help them develop grit. And they always succeed. Like, they always succeed. So it's nothing, yeah, it's mean and yeah, it's harsh, but like, I'm not spoon feeding you as a practicum supervisor. And that's important to kind of determine, like, okay, this is what a practicum is. It's really helping get the student into the field. And how are you going to take that information as a supervisor? Like, what makes you different than all of the other music therapy supervisors? And personally, for me, it's throwing them into the fire. Like, I personally don't think that spoon feeding any student who's a senior in practicum is helping anybody. Like, a practicum student really should be doing sessions. They should be they shouldn't need me to be in the room. Like, well, obviously you need to be like watching them, you know, but like, they shouldn't need me to physically tell them, oh, set up the drums for drum circle. Oh, now we're going to do a drum circle. Oh, like, the clients are a little antsy. You know, what's the best activity? Like, as a senior in college, you really shouldn't, like, your practicum supervisor shouldn't be doing that for you. And we're going to get to that in a little bit. So anyway, so that's practicum. And so the way I treat it is it's just a shorter version of internship, especially if the student is a senior and this isn't their first placement. In terms of internship, now you're actually like in it, you know, you're working with the clients every day. You go through training at the facility as an intern. I didn't go through any training, like facility specific training, as a practicum student. But as a internship student, you do go through training. You do, you go through whatever the case may be, the week. Well, I had to do 3 weeks at my internship, which was fine because I definitely needed it. And then you do, 3 weeks. I observed hospital training, CNA training, feeding training, the whole 9 yards. And then I got my schedule, and then I observed the music therapist doing the schedule, right? And then that was it. And then I went off and I did my own thing, and I co-led, I think, 2 sessions, because I co-led a group session and then I co-led a relaxation session, and that was totally necessary because like the relaxation session was specific to the population. The group session I co-led, the patients were very, very difficult to work with. They were just like unresponsive most of the time, so you really had to be big and in their face. And that was something that I wasn't used to. And then, but I had my own session. I had 2 to 3 individual sessions. Then I had, I did have my own. I had my own child group, 2 children groups, 1 adult group, 2 individual sessions. There's a couple other things I had to do throughout the day, like meetings and stuff like that. I had to do notes, of course. And in choir, we all did, as a music therapy team, we did it together because the choir was like really big. But there you go. Like, so I was technically treated like as a employee. My responsibilities as an internship student were the same as an employee. The only thing is that like I had regular supervision. Sometimes like I definitely had it once a week, but sometimes I had it twice a week. I co-led, right, with another music therapist, and there was always a music therapist like sorta in the area. So if anything did go wrong in my individual session, like a seizure, for example, that happened plenty of times, like there was a nurse's station just down the hall. The music therapists were like maybe right next door doing notes. So it wasn't like I was alone with the patients in the room. That's why it's important that you go through, facility training. But if anything did go wrong, like there was a music therapist around the corner, there was a nurse around the corner, so but that's how it was. So as an internship student, you technically are on staff. It's just that you get more supervision and people are there for you. Whereas like when you're on staff, if a client has a seizure, you need to know what to do. You can't just like, hey, this person's acting strange, what do I do? You know what I mean? So anyway, again, that's how I was treated at my internship. Yes, did I go through crap at my internship? For sure. There was one day when like all the music therapists called out sick and like took a personal day. And then there was another night when they all went out to the bar. And like and they went out and they did fun things, and I was there. I was there when they all took a personal day. I was there when they went to the bar. I was there on the weekends. Like, so yeah, my schedule was crap, but it was only for 6 months, you know, and you do the 1,000+ hours, you know. So, and yeah, where my hours were, well, usually I work Sunday through Thursday. So that was, in my opinion, that was a good schedule because my mom also worked Sunday through Thursday. So it worked out. But a lot of people, and I worked a couple nights, and a lot of people thought that like sucked because you worked Sunday, you're doing projects for internship because you are technically in school. So you're doing projects on Saturday. You are at your clinical site at night. Technically, Friday was like my only day off, but it wasn't necessarily off because you still had like work and tests and projects and papers and all that stuff to do. So yeah, so it sucked, but it was only like, it was only like 6 months is really not that long, you know what I mean? Even like other clinical placements, like, you know, it's only like a small portion of your life. It's not really that big a deal. Like 1,000 hours is a lot of time, but it's really, in the whole realm of things, it's not that big a deal. It just makes you a better person. The harder it is, the better music therapist you're going to be, and that's exactly what happened. So anyway, so that's how I go about my internships. And here's where the tea section of this video comes in. I do not have tea. I just put water in my thing. I have to heat up some hot water. So, but anyway, here we go. So, at my placement, at my first job, okay, I was working there for 6 months, right? Because I started, took my exam, and then 6 months. So 6 months from the start date. Now usually it's 6 months to a year, right? That's when you should be getting your first practicum student. And my internship had a very like distinctive way of going about it. Like, you know, the head of the department, she walked you through, if it was like your first time getting a practicum student, she really walked you through it. She gave you special supervision. She like gave you all the skills you needed to be successful. And that's what I was kind of expecting at my place of employment. No. That is not what I have received, okay? So once I brought up the idea, and this was like way in the beginning. So I began working there, I want to say in February. So in March, a month in, after I finished my training for the place, I told my supervisor I'm interested in starting a practicum/internship program. Because honestly, like, when you follow the AMTA guidelines, like, which I'm going to post at the bottom, when you structure it, like, it's just, the way I structure it is pretty much the same. It's just like the timeline is a little bit different. And of course, practicum students don't have as much responsibility. A practicum is easier. You know, even though I go about it like a little bit more intense than most practicum supervisors, it is like easier. Anyway, so my supervisor was like, okay, yeah, that's fine. Like, once you get your board certification, like, you know, well, you work here for what, like, you know, a year? And I was like, no, you work for 6 months. Like, 6 months is like, you know, you can get a practicum student in 6 months. Okay, well, we'll check in 6 months. You know, that was her response. And you gotta be, I mean, I understand like a year for a practicum student is kind of like the general rule of thumb. But you have to remember that becoming a music therapist is so hard. And And really, like, if you think about the structure of becoming a music therapist, you went through just as much clinical training as a master's student. You know, a master's in music therapy, they go a little bit more in depth into like the therapy aspect and the populations, and it's a little bit more research focused also, but clinically it's exactly the same. If not, you did more hours. So you really are mentally ready to take on a practicum student at 6 months as a music therapist. Okay, you heard it from me. 6 months bare minimum when you can take a practicum student. Like when you are mentally and like skilled, like that's actually probably when you're the best at music therapy is 6 months, because you just had all this training recently. Now, I understand that every facility is a little bit different, and some facilities might have that 1 year rule and it might be written in stone, but this facility was not one of those facilities. And this jerk wanted me to wait a year. And anyway, we'll continue on with the story. So 6 months comes, and I already lined up an internship program. Again, I followed the AMTA requirements, and I did both because, like I said, they're the same. It's just the timeline, and practicum students don't have that much responsibility. So I did both, like a practicum and an internship, and I did it following the AMTA guidelines, and I made packets, and everything was all set, and I planned it based on my internship and my practicum experiences. I even checked in with supervisors that I had at these placements. So I did my research. I prepped, I planned, you know. So before I started reaching out to universities, I told my supervisor, like, yeah, here's all the information. It's all there. Like, I'm following the guidelines to a T. You guys all know I'm a visual learner and I'm a math person. So when you tell me that I have to follow guidelines, like even though I'm a rebel, I do follow guidelines, you know. I'm very good at like doing that. No, duh, I'm a student. We all good at that. So, so I went through the whole 9 yards, and I showed her, and I put a lot of time and effort into it, and like, I didn't necessarily get paid for a lot of the, prep work required, and that's important to mention, that like you might not get paid for the prep work required, or you might get paid the same salary for the prep work required. Just keep that in mind. But it didn't matter to me because I wanted to get like this practicum situated. Anyway, and then my supervisor told me that, well, you've been working, this is what she said. Well, you've been working for the company for 6 months now. I think you should probably wait a year and a half to get a practicum student and 3 years to get an intern. What did you just tell me? Like, no, I am not doing that. First of all, where does it say? Where is it in writing? Like, where is it? Like, does the facility specifically say that I need to wait a year and a half to get a practicum student and 3 years for internship? No, the facility doesn't state that anywhere, but that's what I did. Well, you dumb. Like, I don't know. I'm just being honest. Like, you need to throw yourself into these situations. You need to, like, put yourself out there. You need to, like, you know, and it's not like I was, I woke up today and I want to start a practicum. Like, no, like I told you when I first started working, I got board certified, we set the 6 month date, I did all of my prep work. I did a lot of prep work. I was passionate about that work that I did, and I didn't get paid for most of it. And now you're telling me that I have to wait a year and a half? I'm not even going to be here in a year and a half. Like, I'm getting my master's, right? So, no, like, why? So, of course, instead of freaking out like I just did to you guys, I respectively said, well, I don't understand where you're coming from, because at my internship, it was 6 months. You had to work at the facility for 6 months for a practicum student and 1 year for an intern, and then 2 years for board certified internship. And my facility, our music therapy department at my internship has been running for over 25 years. This facility, this program, it's not even like 2 years old. So I don't understand where you're coming from. I don't agree with you. I don't see this in writing. I'm taking this as a personal attack and not a professional guideline. Therefore, that's just a nice way of saying, screw you, I'm going to do what I'm going to do. And that's exactly what I did. I did definitely talk to the boss about this practicum decision. So no, I didn't just go ahead and get a practicum student and cause chaos. But I did go above my supervisor and talk to my boss, and he said it was fine. So she was mad because I went above her to ask the same question. It was almost like I asked Dad, and he said yes to the cell phone when Mom said no, kind of like that. So obviously I got backlash in that department. But it is important, this is why I'm telling you the story, because you know what you need. And if you went to a national roster internship like me at a facility that had the department running for over 20 years at a complex, like, specialized hospital, you know, like, when you enter into situations where the program or the company isn't as developed, it's always good to, like, compare it to a company that is, or a program that is developed, and reach out to those. Like, I reached out to my practicum, I reached out to my internship supervisors. I also did discuss this issue with friends and colleagues, and everybody said the same thing. If your boss says it's okay, and, you know, in writing it's fine, and, like, you know, it's only 6 months to start a practicum, like, that's average, you know, that's stated X, Y, and Z. She's just jealous. She's just taking it out on you personally. And when a supervisor brings personal issues to work, you really, it's hard, because as a music therapist, you're not necessarily respected. So it's very easy for them to take their personal issues and just put you down and, like, keep you down, like, doing music therapy for long periods of time and not grow. And that's the takeaway here, is that you know yourself, and it's really important to set, like, professional boundaries, professional guidelines, and I mean, make sure that they're reasonable. Like I said, I wasn't, like, a freshman saying, oh, I want to start a practicum, or, like, you know, I did my work, I did my research, I reached out, I set a, like, schedule, a curriculum. I have all the skill sets. I was confident in my abilities. So, I was ready. And when I presented the information to my boss, he agreed. So, like, you know, you have to, sometimes you do have to make enemies at work, especially when personal issues are considered into the situation. So anyway, moving on. So once I got approval from the boss, and it was stated that my practicum students did not need to go to clinical training at the facility because they were only practicum students, I reached out to universities. And I reached out to psychology departments, in addition to music therapy. And I got one practicum student, my first practicum student was a psychology major with a music minor and interested in doing music therapy in grad school. And him, in addition to all the other practicum students, they all, like, it was technically an internship, but, like, in their course curriculum, but the internship was only 50 hours. So again, I took the school's internship curriculum and worked it into my practicum curriculum, and so all the requirements were met. Most of these students didn't have to do papers with their clinical placement, and a lot of times it did say it's a practicum / internship, but the point is that they needed to get 50 hours and these goals needed to be met. Like I said, my first practicum student, he was not a music therapy major, but he psychology, music minor. I didn't ask him to do any music therapy sessions. I just really asked him to do more, like, psychology sessions, cognitive psychology, behavioral psychology, those types of activities. So he was the exception to the rule. But again, it showed and promoted me as a practicum supervisor that I could adapt and change in order to meet the course requirements and to meet the practicum requirements at a spur of the hat. And I'm very, very organized too. So like when that occurred, it was like I already revamped it before he even arrived. And every single time I felt like I did something good with my practicum, I got so much backlash from my supervisor. And that's like, I guess, the main point that I'm trying to make, and where I'll share the little tea story, and then we'll come to the close. My supervisor. Once things started to go pretty well with my internship and my practicum, and the students were coming in and they were doing well, and yes, I threw them in just like I mentioned before, and they all succeeded because they were all wonderful students. Once things started to go well, my supervisor flipped out on me. And she flipped out in front of the entire treatment team. It was the most unprofessional and embarrassing moment in my recent job. It really, honestly, and like, she freaked out and she told me, because what ended up happening was I was going on vacation for like a couple weeks, so I was only going to have the practicum student come one time when I was on vacation. And again, that happened many times in the past in my experience. So I said, I need time to talk to my student today. I can't do sessions at 2 o'clock, whatever the case is. I can't do sessions at like 2 o'clock because I need time to talk to my student since I'm going away. That's all. That's what I said, right? And the whole thing blew up. She said I was irresponsible. She said I was immature. She said that I didn't know what I was doing. I wasn't handling the internship properly. I didn't put the intern through training. You know, I didn't I didn't do sessions with my intern. I didn't sit there in the room with my intern. The list goes on and on and on. And it was like, because first of all, I was not really being respected at that facility because I was young and I was a music therapist, and most people didn't understand what music therapy was. But she called me out, and the facts that she was saying weren't even accurate because I didn't discuss the internship with her. I discussed it with my boss. I discussed it with colleagues. Like, once she turned me down, I didn't include her in it anymore. So anyway, the point that I'm trying to make is that during that moment, I stood there and I was like, okay. Do you not want her to come while I'm not here? Okay. And that's all I said. And after the whole situation ended, like, just because I held myself together during that moment, everybody at the facility actually ended up having more respect for me and less respect for my supervisor because she brought up all these personal concerns in front of everybody, which is so unprofessional, it's not even funny. So that was brought out. Like, her unprofessionalism, her personal feelings, her personal, anger towards me, it all came out, and the whole facility saw, and the whole treatment team, I should say, saw. And because I was able to hold myself together, it made people feel bad for me. It made people see that I actually was more mature in the situation than she was. And once I got that feedback, I was like, good going, girl, because I was really mad. And I ended up discussing with my supervisor after the fact that, you're spoon feeding your intern, and that's fine if that's what you're doing. This is what I told her personally. Like, you personally are spoon feeding your intern. Like, this intern, her final project was to write down all the ice cream and coffee spots, in a 5-mile radius. What kind of final project is that? Like, that's what rec therapists do, okay? Not that I'm like putting rec therapy down, but like, when people say that rec therapy is easier than music therapy, it is. And there you go. I have not only are their clinical hours less, but they get to do stuff like that. Or at least if you have this supervisor, you get to do stuff like that, okay? So anyway, so I brought that up. Like, what kind of rec therapist are you, teaching her that, like, oh, writing, like, you know, coffee and ice cream in a 5-mile radius? What kind of final project is that? You ran out of time. You ran out of time. You were not organized with this intern. You spoon-fed her. And that's fine, because that's the way you are. But that's not the way I am. That's not the way I want my internship to be run. I want my internship to be professional. I want my students to come in here and be like motivated and ready and mentally, physically, like confidence-wise, ready to handle the world, and they all are. They're all very confident, and they're all very prepared to handle the working world, and that's the point, because that's what happened to me during my internship. That's what happens to everybody. Like, every music therapist gets thrown in, you know what I'm saying? Like, everybody has to do it. So, like, spoon feeding doesn't help anybody, and I'm personally against spoon feeding. But like, if that's you, then that's you. But that's not me, okay? And like, and that out there was uncalled for. And now I'm really not gonna take you seriously. But anyway, but this personal spat, like, happened personally in the office. Guess y'all can see that I'm not asking the supervisor for a letter of recommendation, but it doesn't matter, cause she's stupid. No, I'm just kidding. She's not dumb. She's just not organized. She's just not a good manager. And I think, and it taught me that being a manager, like, you can take all the classes you want, but it really does come from within. And that's why after this experience, I was ready and prepared to take on my MBA program, which is what I started after this whole debacle. But the goal here that I'm trying to mention, because yes, this video is 30 minutes long already. The goal that I'm trying to mention is that you're going to get a lot of hate. You're going to get a lot of people that are going to like talk down and think that like you're not ready to handle an internship. And it's like, well, if you're a rec therapist and only practicing for 6 months, yeah, you aren't ready to handle an internship. If you're a dance therapist and like you didn't have that much clinical training in undergrad and you didn't have like a national roster internship, well then yeah, you're not going to be able to handle a practicum or an internship student after working for 6 months. But as a music therapist, we go through so much training that we have so many connections and we have so many resources that we are actually ready to handle an internship / practicum in 6 months. Okay? Follow the guidelines based on your department, based on your facility, but if there are no guidelines, know that you are ready to handle it. I'm going to leave down below the procedures that you have to follow to become and start your own internship / practicum. But just be confident in yourself. Set a goal, like, I'm gonna work, yeah, you know, nobody stays at a company for like longer than a year anymore, right? Like, so set yourself a goal, like, oh, I wanna intern, you know, a year, and then, you know, I practice music therapy for a year, and now I'm gonna have an internship for a year, and then I'm gonna do maybe a national roster internship after that. Like, set some professional goals for yourself and stick it out, because there are some horrible supervisors out there that are really hate you because you're beautiful and you're smart and you're the younger generation and they're scared of you. So, but don't let that bother you. Don't let that harm your ability to make a difference in the music therapy world. Okay, have a good day, everyone. Talk to you later. Bye.